We in Germany had the luck that we could set up a larger scale joint project on early monumentality, which I'm part of now, and I'd like to present you some of the results from these projects that could add some arguments to our discussion here. I want to give you a short overview about what this SPP actually is. And then I want to go to different spatial scales and present projects on different spatial scales that have connections to our questions here, and try in the end to give a very short summary. So to give an overview, the SPP consists of several different projects done from several different university departments, research institutes, and heritage management offices. And its main topic is how is the relation between monumental buildings and social structures and developments after the emergence of sedentism at 4100 Cal BC in Central Northern Europe. Come on. So there are a lot of projects, as I told you. One of the main ideas is that we have projects on different spatial scales. So we have projects that identify smaller key catchment areas, studies that bring these individual cases into a regional context, and super-regional studies that try to bring all together. And these are cross-cut by different tropical approaches, traditional archaeology, as well as science. And as I said, on the micro scale, we try to investigate the individual manifestations of megalithic architecture. And I want to bring you one example here, that is Borgstedt, which I think shows some unique interpretations of the megalithic idea. On the meso scale, we try to embed these individual sites into a broader regional picture. And here I'd like to point out some things that our team that investigates the megalithic of Mecklenburg-Vorpommern at the moment tries to investigate. And on the macro scale, we try to provide the ideological and economical or environmental background for the megalithic architecture. And here I want to give you two examples of the work that is done there. To go to the local scale, we are now in the center of Schleswig-Holstein at Borgstedt, and we see here a complex of an enclosure site here, which is the Büdelsdorf site, and related burial sites that point rather directly to this enclosure. So we think that there's a good indication that there is some kind of relation between the two sites. The whole thing is embedded in an even larger megalithic landscape, but we will just concentrate here on this grave field marked in blue there. The whole site is currently investigated by Franziska Hage. We're talking about 12 individual burial sites here. 10 of them are excavated. And we have there mainly extended dolmen, one passage grave and one polygonal dolmen. But we have a very diverse layout of the mounds. We have 3 round mounds, 10 long mounds, plus 4 flat graves in that area, and 2 miniature dolmen, which I want to point your attention to later on. And we have also 3 kinds of surroundings of the mounds. Please don't mind the typo. We have only one which shows the typical stone setting around, which is a round mound. The others have either posts or double posts, so wooden architecture to surround the mound, or even just pits that are interpreted as being pits for the construction of the mound itself. The miniature dolmen are located northeast of the long mount LA29. These are stone kists of approximately half a meter in width and 1 meter in length. They are dug a bit into the natural surface. They show also a pavement of flint like other megalithic graves at that site. We have unfortunately no finds there or no charcoal, so we cannot date them, but they resemble quite closely the larger dolmen at the same site, and I would be glad if you have some examples of the same kind that you can give me maybe later on. At the site we have general, rather fragmented find material. We have some different amber beads that point to the Middle Neolithic times. Quite few flint artifacts, 5 axes or fragments of them, and 40 traverse arrowheads beside different other not so typical flint material. We have some sherds there, some ceramics, 12% of it was decorated with a broad spectrum of decoration motifs and typological temporal horizons. We could make 200 vessel units out of them, and most of the finds are outside of the chambers. Especially they form some funnel-shaped clearing zones where we could identify the clearing activities of the chamber, and different sherds from the same vessel could be found in the clearing zones in a close vicinity, which gives us the idea that the breaking of the vessels actually took place only at the clearing activities and not inside of the chamber. So this gives us some indications how these clearing activities, the sequence was. Unfortunately, at the moment we don't have C14 dates for the site. This is unto work, but with typological arguments we could make a sequence out of this. I don't want to go into detail here, but what is obvious is that the different mount constructions, the different kinds of mount constructions doesn't show a temporal pattern. So long mounts and round mounts are constructed rather in the same time. I want to point your attention probably to 2 very peculiar objects. I call them now socket-like objects. They are found in the clearing area of LA30. They represent elongated hollow tubular fragments which have a length of approximately 5 centimeter and a diameter of approximately 3 to 4 centimeter. There are 2 comparable types. The one could be the biberons, these drinking vessels. They could represent the handles of them, but these are general half in size of the objects we have, and Borgstedt is far off from the usual distribution area of these things. The other possibility would be that we have here Tuyere, I hope I pronounce it correct. It would be the first time that we would have such things in the Van der Beek and North group as far as I'm aware of. And maybe we would have here a material proof of metallurgy in this area, which would be very interesting, I think. To summarize this, we have here clusters of burial sites at Borgstedt in a ritual landscape, a variety of architectural forms that doesn't connect to temporal developments. We can see specific interpretation of the megalithic idea, and the intrasite analysis help us to reconstruct the actual ritual sequence in which the graves were used. To go to the intermediate scale, I like to concentrate on, like the project team called it, area of transitions in Mecklenburg-Vorpommern. It is our working group in Frankfurt that investigates it, and they try to analyze the architectonical dates of the North German megalith graves in general to detect such areas of tradition or megalithic landscapes, and try to investigate how they can be connected to social patterns and if their social patterns are represented here at all. One tool of them is a systematic and standardized recording of the megalithic graves called Megaform, and is a quite good tool to go beyond the traditional typologies. The first question, if we deal with spatial distribution, is the spatial distribution we see, has this something to do with the spatial distribution that once was there, or is it just a residual of later activities? They try to investigate this by mapping it against the occurrence of glacial erratics and more recent fieldstone architecture, and I will zoom in here a bit, you can see the megalithic graves with the rectangles, the glacial erratics by the dots, and the modern fieldstone or recent fieldstone architecture by the triangles. And what is visible is that the megalithic graves rather fit with the distribution of the glacial erratics, what is not a very strong surprise, but there are areas where there is not material readily accessible, and still there we have megalithic graves. The other thing is that the modern fieldstone architecture is at the same areas like the megalithic graves, and doesn't open up spaces in this distribution of the megalithic burials. So we could say that the people built the megalithic graves where they could have been built, but also where this building was not done so easily. So maybe one of the main drivers for the actual location of the grave was social determined. The other thing is that at least the reuse of fieldstones, of larger stones in recent architecture, in this case doesn't disturb the picture very much in sense of systematic failure. We know that there's a lot of disturbance and a lot of loss of megalithic graves, not at least since the work of Niels in the Sarup area. So when we have a pattern that can be analyzed, there could be several ways to do this. One would be probably the traditional typology, but using this we see some spatial patterns inside the individual regions of Schleswig-Holstein and Mecklenburg-Vorpommern. There are two different typologies and they are not easily to bring together. On a causal typological scale, just distinguishing between dolmen, passage graves and chamberless long barrows, we can see that we have here a concentration of chamberless long barrows. Maybe the dolmens are distributed all over the Baltic coast, and maybe we have a bit of concentration here of the passage graves in central Mecklenburg, but still the picture is not very clear. And we hope that new analysis on the basis of megaform will help to clarify this picture a lot. This is still work in progress, so I can't show you final results here, just an example to show the possibilities. With already recorded megalithic graves, the team did a correspondence analysis, and this reveals that in Mecklenburg-Vorpommern we can see spatial patterns in this correspondence analysis that doesn't actually fit well with the traditional typologies. So the main ordination variables are not those that are used in traditional typological analysis. One of the main influence, for example, is the chamber floor material, which I will come back later on. For Schleswig-Holstein, there is actually no regional pattern visible, and this has also to be investigated why this is the case and what forms there some regions, and or what things could be used for identifying spatial patterns. One thing that can be used are elements or attributes that are usually not that much used in such analysis, and one of this is probably the chamber floor material. We can see if we map this, the amounts, the ratios on a map, we see a clear gradient from east to west, where we have here rather clay and red sandstone as floor material, while we have here more the flint and other stone materials as pavements. So there is a spatial pattern visible. In between we have some kind of transition zone where the things mix up a bit, but at least here is a clear spatial distribution visible. So we think that these patterns can be interpreted to be social determined, which gives us maybe indications for the underlying social processes. on a broad scale comparison, traditional typologies have their limits, but relevant patterns can be revealed by looking at different attributes, looking at the graves on an attribute level, and especially attributes that haven't been used that much until now have a quite strong potential to reveal spatial distribution patterns. Now coming to the super-regional scale, I want to give you two examples of the work done in the SPP. The one is the work done in the archaeobotanical segment. We have their off-site analysis, which identifies pollen archives, as well as on-site analysis, where people try to investigate the plant use on the spot. On the off-site, we have, for example, done recalibration of the temporal sequence in the Lake Bela, which is quite important pollen record for our region. But the team tries to connect different pollen diagrams to some kind of standard pollen diagram, so that we have the over-regional signal more strongly. I want to present you in detail studies on-site. This is done comparing different sites with different characters, namely graves and settlements, and the plant material that is found there. The research hypothesis at the moment is that different plant use at different sites is due to the mood of activity there. If we compare the ratios of gathered plants against domestic plants, we see in domestic context domestic plants, which is maybe not a very large surprise. But in ritual contexts, namely graves, we see that there's a lot of gathered plants in place, much more than we have cereals. So putting this together, maybe we see a resemblance of the economic mood of the ancestors reflected in the plant use at burial sites as a working hypothesis at the moment, and has to be tested on more sites. Also on the super-regional scale, the coordination project has its range, which is consisting of Johannes Müller, Friedrich Lüth, and myself. Besides the coordination of the activities and the communication, we tried also to give additional scientific output. And for us, a very important tool is the Priority Program Database, which is a connected database for all the projects where all the data should go in. Maybe for you of greater interest is another database that we have set up, that is Radon, which maybe one of you will already know, was a long time an Access database that you can download. Now we have made it as a real internet database available. You can there live online calibrate individual C14 dates, search with different search possibilities. 69% of the sites are geo-referenced, so you can also use a spatial search system. At the moment we have 4,800 dates. Some of them are still unpublished, so 4,300 dates approximately are public available. And it's not only my work, but also a work of a lot of other people. Having such a number of C14 dates, we try to use these as a proxy for activities, and we are aware that there are a lot of methodological difficulties in such an approach. For example, that different regions have different scientific traditions in doing C14 dating. That's why we divided the whole distribution area of the funnel-beaker group into individual sub areas in which we then try to identify patterns in them and not between larger areas. Another difficulty is maybe if there any connection actually between C14 dates and, let's say, population patterns that took place in the past. And we tried to identify this by mapping pollen data of human activity against the C14 curve and the sum curve, and we get quite good correlation between the both. So we think that we can use the settlement sites and the C14 dates from settlement sites as a proxy, as a rough proxy for things that go in the demographic developments. Having done this, we try, as I said, to identify different activities of different feature types and map them against each other, and especially I like to point out the settlement sites where we can see a population decrease, if it is true, here after 3,350 to 3,100 in some of the areas, in most of the areas actually. We have some areas where this pattern is not visible, and those are the Swedish areas here and the Danish Isles. One could say probably that the Swedish areas are on the periphery of the funnel-beaker phenomenon, so that they follow different rules. The same may be true for Danish Isles, not that it is periphery, it is actually the center, and we have there probably a different intensive development of the funnel-beaker costumes, which is also indicated by a delayed appearance of the single grave costume in this area. This pattern is also visible in the pollen data, where we have an indication that the openness of the landscape was decreased, so the woodland regenerates in that time. And we have also correlations with on the marine record as well as on local records in lakes, with indications of a wetter and cooler climate period. So maybe I'm always critical with climatic determinism, but maybe here is actually a pattern that connects both developments with each other. To sum up a bit, in the SPP we do individual investigations that give us important information on the micro level, that we try to connect to a broader picture on projects on the meso level, and with the super-regional analysis we try to give the background that, and with only that the developments on the micro level can be brought into a broader picture and can be understood correctly. What is maybe of interest is that the general similarities in the botanical remains shed a light on the ideological background that is in which the megalithic architecture is embedded, and the dynamic in the intentions of different activities helps us to clarify the relation between, let's say, mundane and ritual activities. And while the settlement activities seems to decrease in a specific time slice between 3.3 and 3.1, the ritual activities actually here are either intensified or at least continued with the same amount. And I'd like to thank you for your attention, and a very special thanks to all the people that contributes to the work of the SPP and to its results. Thank you.